We're going to take a closer look at the drawing on bitmap layers and some of the differences that are between drawing on a bitmap layer and drawing on a vector layer. Let us start by adding a bitmap layer to our project. So once again, if your layer tabs are collapsed like this, and that's how they are by default, you may not be able to see right away how to add a layer, but if you right click on the name of the layer, then you get a whole bunch of choices here. So you could just say new bitmap layer, click on that, and it will add a new bitmap layer. We'll talk more about these in the layers segment. You could tell that it's a bitmap layer because it has a little blue tab on it. I'm going to expand them because I like doing that. I can see what I'm doing better, and I can see the logo for bitmap layers right up there. So we're going to be drawing on a bitmap layer, and we have our brushes, and as we saw in the preview, we have slightly different options here. So we have like some super soft brushes in the brush styles box here, a hard shading brush, a chalk appearing brush, and these are all done in pixels rather than vectors. And one of the differences with these is that they're made up of individual pixels rather than art that you can pick up. You can't just pick up this stroke and move it around. Once it's down, it's like pencil on paper. You cannot manipulate it anymore other than painting over it or erasing it. But the other important factor is that everything that's drawn on that layer will move together. None of it is separate. The main thing with the brushes in the brush properties is that drawing with a brush in a bitmap layer, you have different properties. One of them is the same as the size, but the other one is the flow. And what this does is it essentially softens or hardens the brush. So by default, this pencil looks like this. But if I make this flow weaker, essentially letting less come out of it, then it gets much lighter and starts to feel more natural, more like this drawing here, which is one that I drew in the bitmap layer. So you can control the flow, and if you turn up the flow quite a bit, like it is on this red brush that I'm using, it looks very hard, very much like a vector. But if I bring the flow back down again, then it really softens up and has that feel like a soft pencil. Draw behind, that option is definitely available even in the bitmaps. So for example, if I want to draw a line behind this red line, pick a nice thick brush and get some purple and enable draw behind. When I do this, it is going to draw behind that red stroke. It's a little bit hard to see because of the shade that I chose. So let me do a black underneath there, and you can see that red pops out from it. Now, because these bitmap strokes are partially, when they're soft, when they have a low flow like I had on there, when they're soft, they do have some transparency. So when you do the draw behind method behind a bitmap stroke, you just have to be aware that if it's a very soft stroke, then it's not going to pop out from the background quite as much as it would if it were a hard vector line. So we have advanced brush properties here as well, and just like with the vector brush, we're going to find those advanced brush properties behind this arrow. And once again, these are extensions of the properties that we've seen over here. We get to have more control over the maximum size, the minimum size, the maximum flow, and the minimum flow. Not just one control, but two of them to really give you quite a bit of control over that. And these are all drop-down boxes. You can control the spacing of the brush. And if you take a look at this preview, you'll be able to see if a larger spacing means that the actual shapes that make up the brush stroke can be so far apart that you can start to see them. Okay, you are able to choose a texture for your brushes in the bitmap interface, and we'll go ahead and do that. in a similar way. We'll select the texture. Again, the hardness or the softness is here, and I'm going to navigate to my folder if I have a stored texture file there. Here's my folder on my hard drive that contains a lot of my resources, including a Targa file. This one is a specific Targa, and it's a texture file I like the look of. You can create your own texture files and store them and then retrieve them anytime that you want to, so this is just another layer of customization. So this works similarly to how it does in the vector on the vector layers. So here you can see that I'm getting a smoother version though of that texture. It has a capability of really smoothing it out, and once again texture scale is changeable here on this slider, and if you look up in the preview window you'll be able to see how that takes effect as a preview stroke.